Hello, welcome to this video where we briefly explore the architecture and design related to the upcoming curriculum implementation. Normally, we would explore the why, which is outlined in the ministerial order and the guiding framework, as well as the how, the teacher quality standard, and exploration of resources and support, as well as the what, architecture and design, and the new Learn Alberta website. The bulk of our conversation for this video will be focused on the what, architecture and design. But before we jump into that, I think it's important for us to mention the teacher quality standard. As you know, the teacher quality standard states, quality teaching occurs when the teacher's ongoing analysis of the context and the teacher's decisions about which pedagogical knowledge and abilities to apply result in optimum learning for all students. In other words, it's our responsibility as professionals to figure out the how with this curriculum implementation. It's our job to ensure that we have done effective planning, that we are considering instruction and assessment practices that meet the needs of every student in our classroom. It's our job to ensure that we're creating inclusive learning environments, and it is our job to make sure that we have the foundational knowledge related to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit for the benefit of all students. In other words, as professionals, we have got this. We have the abilities and the skill sets to take the what and turn it into meaningful learning experiences for the students in our classrooms. Imagine for a moment your administrator comes to you and says, next year, you're going to be teaching a new grade. After you've had a moment to emotionally respond to that statement, I believe that you would engage in a very similar process as I have done in the past, where I look at the program of studies and I read through and identify what exactly it is I'm now responsible for teaching. And as I'm reading the program of studies outcomes, I might say to myself, oh, this part reminds me of an activity I did this year. I can tweak it a little bit for this new grade. Or, okay, I've done this before, but maybe I'm going to try this different, or it's going to work just like I did it this year. Or as I'm reading, I might come across something that I don't know what it is. And obviously that's something I'm going to have to explore before I start teaching this particular subject area. Once I've had some time to read through those outcomes and really make sense of them and attach them to the things and the pedagogical practices that I know, then I'm going to start thinking about resources. Where do I go in my building to find resources connected with these particular outcomes or this particular grade level? Who are the people I can talk to that maybe have worked with this grade or this subject before? And I start thinking about what this is going to play out as in my classroom. I would like to suggest to you that working with this curriculum is truly no different. Imagine that you've been asked to teach a new grade. That is the same process that we're going to work through as we look at these different subject areas. In other words, you have got this. We can do this as educators, as professionals, implementing the how in relation to the what. So now we're going to talk about the actual architecture and design. If you're looking for specific bullet points related to each of these areas, please visit the new Learn Alberta site, where you will find a video that explores each of these in great depth. What I'm offering for you here is simply my notes or the best way that I made sense of these particular pieces to the architecture of the curriculum. As you likely know at this point, all of the new curriculum that is developed in Alberta will follow this structure. So we're going to start seeing some consistency across subject areas and across grade levels, which is new compared to the documents that we're currently working with, as you know. You will see that they have adopted this funnel or tornado type image. And we start with this big idea at the top, the organizing ideas, and we funnel or sift our way narrower down into the bottom of the image. You can think of the organizing idea like chapters of a subject area. So in the book of English Language Arts and Literature, you will find a chapter on phonics. You will find a chapter on text structure. You will find a chapter on oral language. In math, you are going to find chapters like patterns, time, statistics. In phys ed and wellness, you are going to find chapters on movement and skill development, character development, and financial literacy. You're going to notice as you become more familiar with these documents that these chapters might span some or all of the grades. So phys ed and wellness, for example, those chapters that you see in kindergarten are the same chapters that you see in grade 6. However, in subjects like English Language Arts and Literature, you are going to notice that some of the chapters are only relevant to some of the grades, like K-2 or K-4. The thing to remember, though, is this is how there's a general idea that is bringing these outcomes that live in this section together. Next, we have the guiding question. And the intent of the guiding question is to bring focus to the organizing idea and frame the learning outcome. If you're familiar with teaching for conceptual understanding or learning transfer, you are going to notice concepts that have a line through from the organizing idea into the guiding question, and then again into the learning outcome. Again, we are getting narrower and narrower with our focus as we connect the concepts through these layers. As a teacher, you can use the guiding questions to help inspire your planning, as some of them are framed in a way that definitely make you pause and think, and could be a really interesting way to organize or plan a unit. The next layer in the architecture and design is the learning outcome. This is what the students should be able to know, understand, and do by the end of the grade. Notice the stars. This is important. The learning outcome is what must be assessed and reported to parents. I want to highlight the notion that this is what they do by the end of the grade. This is no different than current program of studies that we work with. Whatever's written there is the expectation for June. Therefore, there will need to be conversations within your grade level, within your school, within your system around the benchmarks related to that June expectation and what that looks like maybe for spring reporting, or what does it look like in fall reporting. And these are really important conversations to have, and they will obviously evolve over time, much as we have done with current curriculum that we work with. Underneath each of the learning outcomes are the knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures. The knowledge is what the students need to know. The skills and procedures are what the students need to be able to do to show their understanding of the learning outcome. In other words, that's what you're looking for in your classroom practice. You'll notice as you read through the document, many of the knowledge outcomes, particularly in language arts, have a directly corresponding skill and procedure attached to them. For me, the understanding is the most important part of those cusps, which is what we refer to the knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures as. And the reason for me that is so important, because it kind of acts like a glue. Not only does it help bring greater focus or clarity to the learning outcome, but it also connects the knowledge with the skills and procedures. So for me, those understanding pieces that you're going to see under the learning outcomes were really important for how I looked at all parts, the knowledge, the skills and procedures, and the learning outcome itself. A couple of things that you need to keep in mind related to the cusps. You always have to have your cusps attached to a learning outcome. So you cannot cut up or remove the knowledge or skills and procedures or understandings and take them unsupervised off to another subject area if you're doing some cross-curricular planning, or to another unit. Think of the learning outcome as a chaperone. So the skill and procedure, if you want to spread that across a number of units, has to always go with its learning outcome. It needs to be contextualized by that learning outcome in order to maintain the intent in which it was written. The next thing that you need to keep in mind is that we are responsible for teaching all of the cusps. We cannot pick and choose. This is not unlike our current situation with most of the curriculum that we work with. The expectation is that we teach all of, in our current context, the outcomes. Please note, however, that this does not mean that you can't prioritize the cusps, and that perhaps some of the skills and procedures or knowledge bits are going to be more important for your students to know in relation to that learning outcome than others. When you're having these prioritization conversations, it is essential that we have them with other people in our grade level. We have them vertically with the grades on either side of us. And ideally, we have them as a system to ensure that all students, no matter what site they are learning in, are experiencing the same level and depth related to the cusps and learning outcomes. Finally, it's important to note that the literacy and numeracy progressions, as well as the competencies, are the foundation of the curriculum design. In fact, I'm going to show you shortly how they have been connected back to each of the outcomes for ease of planning and reference, and to really illustrate this notion that they are connected and interwoven to each of the learning outcomes. One of the things I was very excited about was the competencies now including progression by division. So we've split it up and they're written in kid-friendly sentences, so we can see the difference between critical thinking in kindergarten, critical thinking in Div 1, critical thinking in Div 2. These may become very handy as you engage in metacognitive or reflective practices with your students, where you give them one of the sentences and they are asked to provide an example of when they have done this particular competency. Here we see from the New Learn Alberta site how the connection between the progressions are illustrated for you in the learning outcomes. So when you go and access the digital version of the curriculum, you will see when you hover over the learning outcome, a little information circle pops up. When you click on that, you will get a pop-up window that not only shows you the organizing idea, the guiding question, and the learning outcome, but it connects for you underneath the knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures. You can click here to see what resources are attached to the learning outcome. And then you can see where we have linked in the competencies, the literacy progressions, as well as the numeracy progressions. A few pieces of key language to highlight for you as you're reading through the curriculum documents. If you see the words such as, everything following it is optional. So for example, with this knowledge piece out of the grade 1 physical education and wellness, we see physical activity is associated with mental health benefits such as happiness, calmness, improved sleep, positive relationships. I would not be required, or the students would not be required, to know all of these benefits related to physical activity. Perhaps they can only recall, or I'm only going to focus on one or two of those pieces. However, if you see the words including, you are required to teach all of the things following the including. Perhaps a poor example, because I can't imagine teaching math without all these parts. Nonetheless, when we're looking at comparing two unequal qualities, we must teach not equal, greater than, and less than as part of the work that we're doing. Lastly, if you notice something in brackets, that's considered teacher content. So this particular example, we have sentence types including telling or asking. That's what the students need to know for kindergarten grade 1. They do not need to know that they are declarative sentences or interrogative sentences. They simply need to know telling or asking. You will notice, however, some inconsistencies in bracket usage, where in some parts of the document, the word phoneme, for example, might be in brackets, but in another part of the cusp, it is no longer in brackets. So I encourage you to use your professional judgment around the depth of language that we are teaching our students or expecting of our students as we explore this new curriculum. Next steps for learning include ensuring that you are asking us for help when you need it. That help could be regional collaboration, conversations around assessment or planning, or pieces of foundational knowledge that you're realizing that you need to gain prior to teaching the various parts of these curriculum. Please reach out to us either via email to our executive director, or you can follow us on Twitter. Our website is learning-network.org, where you will find our upcoming learning opportunities posted, as well as some resources. And I also encourage you to check out arpdc.av.ca for ongoing highlighting of tips and tricks related to curriculum implementation.